cloud. That's funny. It doesn't say recording has begun.
I can see it in the top corner saying recording.
Okay. And I'm assuming I can edit this because obviously these bits of chat I won't want.
You want to, yeah.
Okay, here we go. Simon Conrich, hello. Thanks for coming on and joining me. This is all a bit formal for you and I because we've known each other for years and we work together. But I wanted to get you along because you are the person that kind of leads the charge for Poisson Rouge in the management and facilitation of our team building, particularly our remote team building activities. We've been working together very closely for a few years now, and I thought it would be interesting for people to hear a little bit about the development of virtual team building and what we offer at Poisson Rouge. So before I do that, can you just give us, your two pennyworth on you? What's your background? Why do you do what you do? What's your experience? That sort of thing.
Well, I've been in the industry now through pure accident for about 18 years. I stumbled across this industry via a meeting with someone who I randomly met and who ended up becoming a director of quite a well-known event company, and worked for them for a number of years and really enjoyed it. Felt I had an aptitude for this sort of thing, and it took me out of my comfort zone and helped me to sort of become more creative and imaginative in coming up with solutions for people in a sort of team building environment. And then that led on to a number of other opportunities over the years. And then I finally settled down into a job working for one company for about 8 years, which was fantastic. At which point I decided that I really wanted to try something different, spread my wings and fly. And for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been a freelance associate with a number of different companies, using my years of experience and know-how to improve experiences for other people.
So, okay, so let's just go on to that for a minute. So you and I met initially many years ago now when we were doing, and I can't even remember, it was some sort of non-virtual team build. And I think one of my colleagues who was then working for me had made a connection with you and brought you into the fray. We connected and got on, and then we reconnected over the need to move very fast at the beginning of the pandemic into a world where we'd been well known as one of the leading team building companies for 30 years. I mean, we were set up in 1992, as you know. But very quickly, we had to change into a company that could deliver tech-based virtual team building. And you had both the connections, the relationships, and the technological experience on how to do that. So you helped us to develop a suite of activities that we were able to offer our clients using technology developed by another company. And so began the beginning of our virtual team building. Can you tell me, maybe stating as they say, the bleeding obvious, but why do you think there's such a big appeal for virtual team building now? For remote team building, sorry.
No, absolutely. I think obviously during the pandemic, we've obviously had this experience of people being very much separated, working from home, isolated away from the office environment. And there's been a desire to bring people together in a non-working environment. So my background for years and years was going to venues, going to offices, hotels, conference centers, and giving people a fun team building experience away from their work at the end of a conference or a meeting or a session. And I think that over the months as the pandemic began, sort of early 2020, people transitioned or started to transition to the virtual world in their work. But there was even more of a need to then service this kind of extracurricular desire for sociability and teamwork. And I think this kind of evolved into this sort of world where people were offering quizzes and escape rooms and murder mysteries, and then also the world of experiential team building, so that making chocolate and cookery and drink experiences. And I think it just came through that, and it was just an extension of what had existed before, but there just was a need for it to happen on a much larger basis. The other reason I think it's grown, and I think we can touch on this later in terms of where it's going in the future, is that I think there were a lot of people who traditionally would always get together who weren't necessarily geographically next to each other. So they might be a European company who have people all over Europe. They might be an Asian company who have people all over Asia, and so on. And I think there was this sort of realization that we're not going to be able to leave our country for maybe a year or so. So what are we going to do? And the virtual world was that solution, I think, definitely.
I think also it's fair to say, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, that the development and rapid advancement of virtual technology. I mean, ironically, for years and years we all had Skype, but when the need was there, Skype just didn't exist anymore. Although they were bought by Microsoft, um, but Zoom very much came to the fore very quickly, and the platforms of choice these days tend to be Zoom and Teams. Although extraordinarily, this is just one of my personal bugbears, Teams still manages to do that Microsoft thing of not supporting Macs. So Mac, the 2/3 of the world that use Macs aren't able to enable audio and video connection sometimes on Teams. It can be done, but there are workarounds and it's a bit clunky. Whereas Zoom seemed to have stolen a march, along with Google Hangouts and Blue Jeans and lots of others. But I want to just touch on something you just said, and that was that we got into the pandemic and there was this sudden need for teams to feel engaged and to remember and to feel that they were part of a team, partly because they weren't physically with the team and they couldn't be physically with the team. And so just so that we understand what we're talking about here, the average duration of one of our virtual team builds at Poisson Rouge is what? What's the duration?
Start to finish, it would usually be about 90 minutes for the experience.
Okay, so the advantage of that being is that even somebody who's become Zoomed to death and they're sitting in back-to-back meetings all day long could find 90 minutes, maybe with drink in hand at the end of a day, or maybe if you were dealing with an international audience, the people in the Far East or in Australasia or something, we could find a time when everyone could come together. So 90 minutes is a good amount of time because, as we all know, in the old world of a team building day, it was exactly that. It was a team building day, and
yeah, it fits nicely into that sort of slot where you could have a morning session where you all got together and thrashed out some work ideas, and then you could have an hour and a half to break it up, and then you could have some more stuff after that, or you could bookend it and have it at either end of the day, and it has that flexibility. Like you say, it's not a whole day or a whole afternoon or a whole morning. It's just a nice little slot.
Okay, so before we talk about a couple of examples of the sorts of things that we've been doing, by the way, I should say that you've got this wonderful background there behind you. And although I want everyone, and I'm sure you do too, to believe that you live and work in a mahogany-lined library, it is actually one of the scenes from the escape room that you run for us. But before we go into that, can you just explain in broad brushstrokes the basis of the technology that we use?
Yeah, so we would use Zoom, or if a client so chose, another video conferencing platform for bringing everyone together in one place. And I always explain to the client that is effectively the venue in the old parlance of team building. We would all usually have met in an office, a conference center, a meeting room, a hotel. Zoom is that. And then we use an app which people can download to their mobile phones or iPads or tablets. And once the app has been downloaded, they simply need to load the game, and they'll be given a thorough explanation during the beginning process of the meeting as to how the game works, how the app works, and how it all interacts to create the experience. And that app essentially is how they play the game. And they play the game in teams usually. And each person in the team has the app on their phone or tablet and plays together as one team, seeing the same things on their phone as the other people in their team. So effectively, they are all working together on a device that they can all see the same thing on at the same time.
And it's so you'd need a phone and you'd need a tablet or a computer to be able to run the game. Most of the games that we run, there doesn't seem to be any restriction on the number of people. But I mean, give us your sense of what's a good number. Are there any restrictions? Is there a maximum? What's the largest one that we've run, etc., etc.?
Oh, I don't think there's a restriction on numbers. I think that certainly team size wise, we tend to focus on sort of 5 or 6 people per team, and that makes a nice size group. Any more than that, and it's just a few too many voices at the same time. So I think that seems to work well. The biggest we've done together is probably around 100 or so.
That's in one go altogether, broken into teams.
Correct. The biggest I've ever done in any of my work situations is 700.
Okay.
And the beauty of it is that you obviously bring everyone together at the start, but then they have to separate into their little sort of groups and silos to complete the task, the activity, the game, if you like. And then you bring them back at the end for the sort of wrap up and results session to find out how everyone's done.
Okay, I mean that's important. I think that from my perspective, we've been running team building, as I say, since 1992. So we know a bit about team building, we know a bit about building teams. But the beauty of this technology is such that we can put any number of people together at once. We can engage them. The outcomes and the feedback and the testimonials we get are always fantastic. I probably shouldn't do this on camera that I'm recording a session with you, but the feedback about you is nearly always very, very positive, which is so strange, but there you go. Could you do me a favor? We've got 6 or 7 different things that we offer. And I don't really want to make this too much of an advert for us, because if somebody's watching this, they're already here. It's really just to give them an insight into what virtual team building feels like and looks like. 2 that particularly seem to capture the imagination are the escape room and the Globetrotters event that we run. Let's just give a very short explanation of those 2 so people get a flavor of what they are.
Absolutely, yeah. The escape room, as you can see behind me, is set in this sort of fantasy world of an art heist. So the idea is that you've tried to steal this precious work of art and have got locked in this room, and the police have been called. They'll take an hour to arrive, standard. So you've got that hour to escape the room to evade capture. And it kind of works its way through 3 levels. Initially, you have to unlock a drawer in this desk behind me. And inside that drawer, you would find a USB stick. You need to decode the USB stick, plug it into that laptop there. And when you open it up, there are some files on there that you then need to work your way through to find a code to unlock the door to get out of the room. It uses mathematics, music, art, puzzles, all sorts of different ideas. And I always say there is something for everyone. So someone might be really good at problem solving, but useless at maths. Another person might be very mathematically minded, but that question where they have to work out what the day after tomorrow is before the week before the next day, completely over their heads. So there's something for everybody. And usually, you find that people by the end of it, they really engage in the experience and come out at the other end, hopefully having escaped. Now, I won't lie, success rates, usually we expect to be around the 30-40%. So this is not a promise that everyone will escape, and no good escape room should promise that. I think if anyone's done an escape room before and hasn't escaped, I'd say they probably still enjoyed it. Just the fact is that you can't always escape the room. So yeah.
Sorry, I think there's an important caveat there that this is about an engagement process. It's a team build. It's about getting people to compete, have fun, share resource, communicate, and just feel that they belong. And so escaping is kind of the nirvana, the icing on the cake. But really, it's the process. It's like a quiz with bells on. It's like an activity that challenges you mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I mean, we did one recently together where I used it as an opportunity to fundraise for a cause I'm very passionate about. And actually, I think only 1 team escaped, much to the chagrin of all my friends who attended. But the thing is, they all said to a man and a woman, it was the best experience they'd ever had on Zoom. We won't go any further than that on a particular comment. But could you just tell us a bit more about, let's say, Globetrotters, which is quite different in a way?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, Globetrotter certainly, even from the background that you can see, already it's got a theme of traveling around the world. And the idea is to travel to as many countries as you can, and you're trying to earn travel credits. So each time you go to a different country, you'll answer questions and complete tasks on that country. Again, it involves some really clever technology, some use of augmented reality. So what you would have is each country will have an image that you need to scan using a scanner built into the app to unlock the tasks in that particular country. And once you complete all the tasks in that country, you'll then have to figure out where you're going to next. And if you can figure it out, then you get paid travel credits to fund that travel. And if you can't figure it out, then you'll have to pay for the travel out of your own pocket. And the idea being that the most travel credits at the end is the winning team. But the experience is the fun of going around these countries. There'll be lots of sort of very generic sort of based around that country's cultures and experiences and well-known places. So you might have to, do some cheerleading in the USA. You might have to do a hacker when you're in New Zealand. There's lots of cultural fun things to do, and it's very, very different from, say, an escape room. It's very, fun. It's all about really, and I've sat in on some of these activities and watched people as they've done them, just to get a feel for what the experience is. And it's very much, this is a very upbeat, fun, oh, I didn't know that, oh, isn't that fun type of experience. And then obviously at the end of the hour, we then play back the best photos and videos that they've done during the course of that activity. So we'll show all the cheerleading and all the singing ABBA in Sweden. And it's great fun and people love it. And it's a great way to wrap it up as well.
And it's fair to say that there's also, like escaping from the room, there's also the added competition of who's traveled the furthest by getting the most points, which is miles, etc., etc. I think also this plays psychologically to the fact that we haven't been able to travel, we haven't been able to go anywhere, and suddenly we're going around the world. And I don't know, but it speaks to me as a little bit of escapism, and that I think that's why it's so popular.
I always say to people, this is your opportunity to travel around the world without leaving your house. It's COVID safe. You won't need a passport. Don't worry about Brexit. It's all fine. And people appreciate that, the fact that they can get to these different cultural experiences and take in a little bit of somewhere around the world. And maybe, just maybe, one day they'll be able to actually go to these places again.
That's great. Look, thank you, Simon. Obviously, I know all this stuff, and you know all this stuff, and we've sold hundreds, if not thousands, of spots on our team builds in the last 14 months in virtual world. I just want to talk briefly to finish up about what is going to be the transition back to a combo of virtual and face to face. And in the old days we used to call it a blended world. I don't know what it's going to be called now, but we've already had inquiries and bookings for face to face team activities, team building training. We're quite unusual, as you know, Simon, because you've worked with us for a long time. But Poisson Rouge is a training and development company that does team building, but we cut our teeth in team building. So we kind of have this kind of identity crisis going on. But people are very keen that we can combine some of the team building elements of what we do now with some of the development elements of what we always do. Where do you think it's going to go? Do you think that the virtual world that we now have is going to remain and perpetuate beyond pandemic?
100%. I think the virtual world will still be there as an option. It will obviously not be the be all and end all that it has been for the last year or so. I think people will use it in a number of different ways. So there'll be a number of companies who previously would have flown their employees from all around the world into a central location, put them up in a swanky hotel, paid for all their food and drink and so on, who are now going to say, well, actually, for the same amount of money, we can get together more often in the virtual world and have more meetings, more conferences, and do more team builds. I think people will probably use it in a way, like you said, like as a blended experience, to have a sort of one get together physically and then another get together virtually. I don't think it's something that's just going to go away, that is for sure, because I think people have seen the value of it. And I think you have to remember as well, there's going to be a lot of people over the next year or so who will reevaluate their work balance and their work-life balance and think, well, actually, having spent a year working from home, there's a lot that I think, was really good about it. There'll be a lot of people, particularly young people, who want to get back to the office, want to get back to the social environment and being out and being active and being there. But I think there'll be a lot of people, particularly people with families, people with children, who will actually see the benefits of working from home, or having a more flexible working environment, who might say, actually, I'd like to work online 2 or 3 days a week and come into the office one. And I think that's where this will come in a lot. I think companies just won't be able to get everyone in the office or everyone to a venue at the same time as often as they used to. And there'll be a virtual solution for that, definitely.
And we envisage actually a world where two things will happen. One is that the client will do exactly what you said and say, okay, look, we have 4 quarterly meetings. The first meeting will be face to face and the next 3 will be virtual, or some combo thereof. And there may even be scenarios where people are having a real life conference, but when it's time to do some sort of team engagement activity, we may zoom in and have you and your team, facilitating on a virtual screen, because the technology they need to actually take part in any of the activities will be on their phones. And then whether it's a physical activity and they're off on a treasure hunt, or whether they're actually taking part in a virtual escape room on a shared computer, I think it's this opportunity for blended is going to be there.
Yeah, I think the next few years will be hugely developmental in this arena, and things will kind of happen over the next few years that as we say, will lead to I think a new way of experiencing these things moving forward, definitely.
And I think it's fair to say that it's been mirrored in the development side of our business, so that all the training and development and coaching and leadership and all that stuff that we do, we are now doing a large proportion of it. Well, in fact, currently we're doing all of it remotely because we have to, because of the pandemic. But we've found obviously that the savings in time and money are a big factor. So whereas before we needed a whole day to deliver a training course in resilience, we can do it via webinar in 2 to 3 hours. So in the same vein, I think economics is a factor here, because we both know that the economics of putting 50 people through a remote team build are significantly cheaper than they are about putting 50 people through a face-to-face activity. Simon, as I say, it's kind of weird for you and me to just behave ourselves and talk normally and do this kind of thing, but it's very helpful, I hope, to the people who've dialed in to listen, just to get a sense of what we're talking about here. There are other things, as you've mentioned, as well as the escape room and Globetrotters. There's the murder mystery. We've got various different forms of team social. We've got quizzes. We've got some other activities that involve magic and involve horse racing. But at the end of the day, it's the technology, it's the virtual environment, and it's the ability to understand it and facilitate it well. So appreciate your time, Simon. Thanks very much. And I hope that you and I will be seeing some of our clients soon on many more of these things.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, Simon. Take care.
Pleasure. You too.